Chapter 49th, Mexico. At Kaspersky, I worked with Ivan, Vanya, but back then he was just a colleague, one of those programmers you see in the hallway and greet on autopilot. I was sent to an international security conference because I won a contest, an internal competition for the best presentation. I prepared for it the way I prepared for everything in life, thoroughly, obsessively, to the point of burnout, as if what depended on it wasn't a presentation but my right to exist, because in my inner world, it did. Vanya also got a trip to that conference, and there was a reward for being a great programmer. But his plane froze, the flight was canceled, and he was stranded. I helped him rebook the tickets. The rebooking became the reason Vanya ended up in the same hotel as me. The conference ended, everyone left, and we stayed. In one hotel, in Mexico, in that strange space between colleagues and something else, where you can still pretend nothing is happening. But something was happening. I seduced him out of boredom. That's what I later wrote in a letter to him 10 years later, when I was trying to be honest. Out of boredom. But boredom was a lie. Not out of boredom. Out of hunger. That same emotional hunger that had lived in me since infancy, which I confuse now with love, now with boredom, now with a desire for something new. Hunger for contact. My perfectionist stood behind the scenes of every presentation, 20 rehearsals, a perfect slide, sterile confidence. Inside, the same terror as before grandmother's diary check. Vanya was my prop for the presentation at that conference. I spoke. And won. Best Speaker Award. International Security Conference, a hall full of people, applause and award. From the outside, it looked like triumph. My grandmother probably would have said nothing. Like back then with the diary, would have looked and gone to make soup. But inside I was waiting for that applause the way I'd waited for grandmother's good job all through childhood. I got it. From strangers. From the audience. Not from her. And that evening, Vanya and I sat in a bar, and I wasn't thinking about the award. I was thinking that next to me was a person who made me feel good, not because I was useful to him, but just because. And at the same time, I was thinking about Maxime, about how everything with him had become a habit, that I was bored with him, that I hadn't tried everything I should have tried. All those thoughts that would later turn into 7 years of regret seemed at the time like a sober assessment. I didn't understand yet that this wasn't sobriety. It was my way of fleeing intimacy before intimacy could cause pain. We were left in the hotel alone, but I didn't want to cheat on Maxime. I told Vanya no, not because I was a saint, and not because I loved Maxime that much in that moment. I did, but I'd already gotten used to that love, and what you're used to doesn't feel like love. I said no because I had rules, rigid, iron, unbending rules I'd set for myself back in childhood, when the only way not to get lost in chaos was to hold on to structure. Don't cheat, that was structure. Don't lie, structure. Finish what you start. Structure, like grandmother's corset, only my own. Voluntary, internal. If I don't break the rules, I'm safe. Vanya accepted. We went our separate ways, and I was sure that was the end of it. By then, everything with Maxime had become a habit, or so it seemed. I knew in advance what he'd say, how he'd look, how he'd turn in bed. He was no longer a mystery, and in my world without mystery, there was nothing to breathe. I was uninterested. The relationship had reached the point that normal people probably call stability. But I didn't know that stability is normal. For me, stability felt like a stop, as if life had ended and everyone had just forgotten to announce it. A brain that grew up in anxiety doesn't recognize peace. 5 out of 10 feels like too quiet. A blow is coming. You need intensity to feel alive. I left Maxime, quickly, decisively, the way I was used to doing everything, without hesitation, without looking back. Cut it off. Move on. Don't turn around. We started seeing Vanya. After every fight, Vanya would go silent. Not at home, at the office. He walked past without saying hello, looked right through me, as if we were strangers, and I said hello. Every time. Smiled, said hi, pretended everything was fine. Inside, everything was clenched. Outside, hi, how's it going? This is how we began training what would later, in marriage, become 12 consecutive days of silence. But the training started here,